Alright guys, today we're going to review the algebra concepts of the difference quotient, quadratic functions, and solving quadratic equations. So let's take a look. Alright guys, so we're going to find the difference quotient. Here is our formula to find the difference quotient. So what we do is, it's kind of like slope. Our y's or our f of x's are going to be on top. Okay? And for this x plus h, we're just going to plug x plus h into our x value. And then we'll subtract it from our original function, and then we'll divide it all by h. So for this example, we would set this up as 3, and then instead of x, we're going to do x plus h minus 1, and then minus our function, which was just 3x minus 1. And I'd put that in parentheses so that we don't forget to distribute that negative, and that's all going to be over h. Okay? So now I'm going to go ahead and clean up this top and distribute. So I'll have 3x plus 3h minus 1 minus 3x plus 1 if I distribute this negative here. Okay, all of that over h. Now we're going to kind of clean up the top. So I notice that I have 3x minus 3x, so that simplifies to 0. I have negative 1 plus 1, which leaves me with 3h over h. And since this is just 3 times h divided by h, we can simplify these h's and we're left with 3. Okay, now we're going to try the same thing but with this quadratic. So we're going to go ahead and do f of x plus h. So we're going to do 2 times x plus h squared plus our x plus h. Okay, then we're going to subtract our f of x, which is just 2x squared plus x. All this is going to be over h. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and multiply out this x plus h squared. So remember, that's just x plus h times x plus h. Okay, so once I multiply that out, or distribute that out, I get x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. Then I still have plus x plus h, and then minus 2x squared minus x. All of that over h. Now I can go ahead and simplify the top, or distribute this. So I have 2x squared plus 4xh plus 2h squared plus x plus h minus 2x squared minus x. All of that over h. And now we can kind of talk about do what we just did and simplify the top. So 2x squared minus 2x squared, so that cancels to 0. Okay, I also have an x minus x. Okay, so I'm left with 4xh plus 2h squared plus h. All of that over h. Okay, and I notice that they all have at least one h in common. So that means I will be left with 4x plus 2h plus 1. All over 1, or I can just simplify it to that top. And I'm just going to rewrite that over here so that you can kind of see it. 4x plus 2h plus 1. Once I factored out that, or divided an h out of all of those. Alright guys, for this quadratic, it wants us to find the vertex, the axis of symmetry, say if the vertex is a min or a max, and find the domain and range. I kind of made a list so that I can fill them as I go. But for the first part, for the vertex, remember when we're trying to find a quadratic, the vertex is just the hk point. Okay, we talked about h and k just being the way that we shift. If I look at this, I can't find the h and k based off of it because it's in standard form. So we're going to need to find our h, which is negative b over 2a. And then to find our k, we just plug h in for our axis. Okay, so let's go ahead and find our h. So we're going to do opposite of b, so negative 4 over 2 times our a, which is 2. That's going to give me negative 4 over 4, which is negative 1. Now to find k, we just plug those back in. So I'm going to do 2 times negative 1 squared plus 4 times negative 1 minus 9. Now this gives me 2 minus 4 minus 9, which ends up being negative 11, and that's our k value. Okay, and this was our h. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my vertex over here. It's just the point hk, so it'd be negative 1, negative 11. Okay, now remember, if I was going to kind of just jot this or kind of rough sketch this, if my vertex was at negative 1, negative 11, it's going to be down here, and it would look something like this. Since my a value is a positive 2, it would be opening up, okay, and the axis of symmetry is the line that cuts it right down the middle. So that line would be a vertical line at whatever my h value is. So the axis of symmetry would be x equals negative 1. Okay? Is it a min or a max? Well, it opens upwards, so the vertex is at the bottom, so it's going to be a min or a minimum. Okay? Now by domain, it goes on to the left forever, so negative infinity, and the right forever, so positive infinity. Now my range, it stops at that bottom. Well, that bottom point is at negative 11. So it's going to go from negative 11 to positive infinity with bracket around negative 11, and it goes up to infinity forever. Okay? Now think, if the a value is negative, then it would flip and it would look something like this. So then that changes your min and your max, and it might also change your range. But not for this problem, that's just for future reference. Now we're going to practice solving quadratics. For this first one, since I just have something that's x squared, the easiest way to do this is by the square root method. So we're just going to get x squared by itself. So I'm going to divide by 2. So I have x squared equals negative 5. Now remember, when we square root both sides and we square root a negative, we're going to have x equals a plus or minus I, because remember, square root of a negative is I, and then square root 5, since we can't break down that square root. Right, now for this one, a little bit trickier. I can't solve it yet because I don't have an x squared, but if I distribute, that's going to leave me with x squared minus 2x equals 2x minus 2. Now let's go ahead and get everything over to one side. So I have x squared. I'll subtract this 2x over here. So I'm left with negative 4x. And I'll add the 2 over, so plus 2 equals 0. Now the easiest way to solve a quadratic is probably to factor. So if I just check real quick, is there anything that multiplies to 2 that's going to add up to negative 4? Well, the only things that multiply to 2 is 1 and 2. And that adds up to 3. Even if I did negatives, that still isn't going to give me the number I want. So let's go ahead and use the quadratic formula. I might give myself a little bit more space. So remember, here's a quadratic formula. So there it is. And I'm going to go ahead and plug in all my numbers. So my a was 1, my b was negative 4, and my c was 2. So I plugged those in there. So I'm just going to work this out. On the inside, my discriminant would be the square root of 8 all over 2. Okay. So now if I look at the square root of 8, okay, I'm going to have to break that down. I can break that down into 4 and 2, and this would be 2 and 2. So when I rewrite this, I'm going to have 4 plus or minus 2 square root of 2 over 2. And my very last step is that I notice that I can divide everything by 2. So I have 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 all over 1, or just that is what my x equals. All right, so those are solving. So I would always check to see if you can factor it, but if not, quadratic formula works for all of them. Square root method only works when you have an x squared. Go ahead and try some of the practice problems.